and Uncle Orville after she finished 8th grade. Aunt Alice and Uncle Orville were more like grandparents to me and my brothers. The Hale women were great cooks. Nothing highbrow or gourmet, but just solid country cooks. Mom and Alice were both known for their baking, especially cakes and pies. As a child, my birthday cake from Aunt Alice was always a homemade angel food. By homemade, I mean cake flour sifted. 2 cups of egg whites beat to stiff, frothy peaks. Not that Betty Crocker box knit you get from the grocery store shelf. As I grew older, my palate shifted and I became more of a pie man. Whatever pie was on the counter at the time was my favorite. But if choosing, it was, and still is, butterscotch meringue. I can still smell the sugar burning in Mom's cast iron skillet as it caramelizes to a deep golden amber. When boiling water is poured into the molten mixture, it explodes like an olfactory orgasm, the aroma wafting through every room of the house. Underneath every pie filling was Mom's favorite never-fail pie crust recipe, made so often her hands could do the motions without a second thought. I was a sophomore in high school when I made my first blackberry cobbler on my own without Mom or Aunt Alice around. Later, when Mom came home and sampled my wares, she said, "This tastes just like the blackberry cobbler your Grandma Hale used to make. I've not had cobbler this good since the last time I had hers." Inside, I beamed. There was no greater compliment to receive than to be compared to Grandma Hale, Aunt Alice, or my mom. I had arrived. I was becoming a bona fide Hale cook and baker. When I moved out on my own, I would often call Mom or Aunt Alice when I was trying to make something and say, "How do you make homemade noodles, for example?" "Well, you beat the egg yolks and mix it in with the flour, add some salt and bake." "Wait, Mom, slow down. How many egg yolks?" "Well, however many were left over from what I used the egg whites for." It was probably angel food cake. "How much flour?" "Well, I don't know, enough until it looks and feels the right consistency. I don't measure the ingredients, I just make it." I'd be exasperated. Mom and Alice had cooked and baked for so long that they knew what they were doing. Whether preparing a meal for 5 or 75 people, they knew how much of what ingredients were needed. It was cooking by rote. For them, cooking and baking were well-oiled machines. When I moved to Chicago and Mom and Dad would come to visit me, it was always a great joy for me to be able to cook and bake breakfast, lunch, and dinner, allowing Mom to sit back and rest and recompense for all the meals she had made me throughout my life. In 2000, when I did a gut rehab of my kitchen, I built the professional chef's kitchen. Custom-made cherry cabinetry, granite countertops, the commercial appliances, a Sub-Zero fridge, a 36-inch Wolf range with a grill in the middle, and the deep basin farmhouse sink. I had the kitchen my Mom and Aunt Alice always should have had. In the hallway adjacent to the kitchen, I added a matching built-in bookcase to hold and display my cookbook collections and recipe and cooking magazines. In 2010, when the neighbor living below me started what would become a 5-alarm fire, not only my kitchen, but my whole apartment and its contents were destroyed. My bookcase and cookbooks were nothing but ash and rubble. My recipe boxes, full of over 30 years worth of recipes, were gone. Aunt Alice had died the previous year, so her recipes were long gone. There was no accessing them. But I could still replenish a lot of them from Mom's recipe boxes and cookbooks. When I went home that Thanksgiving, Mom was different. She was forgetting things, And it's not just so much she was forgetting, but the manner in which she was forgetting things. It was very atypical behavior for Mom. When I planned to return at Christmas, I thought, I'm going to cull through Mom's recipe boxes and cookbooks and fill out recipe cards until my pens run dry and my fingers cramped. So I get to Mom and Dad's house. I go to the kitchen cabinet where she keeps the cookbooks and recipe boxes. That's odd. The cabinet's empty. Hey, Mom, I want to go through your recipe boxes and cookbooks, and they're not in the cabinet. Where'd you move them to? Oh, I decided I didn't need them anymore, and I threw them all away. I went ashen as the blood drained from my face. This isn't happening. Mom's recipes were the last semblance of trying to retrieve any part of my former life, and now they're gone. I took myself to the basement and cried. What the fuck is going on? How the hell does Dad not see this? Some weeks later, as I was sorting, pitching, and organizing, in Mom's desk drawer, in Mom's office, in kitchen cabinets and drawers, in books, in random places throughout the house, I kept finding copies of the Never Fail pie crust recipe. Mom made this hundreds, if not thousands of times in her life. At what point did she realize her mind was going? How frightened she must have been to repeatedly write down a recipe that was second nature to her. What private hell did she endure that she couldn't say anything to Dad, to anyone, to herself? And Alice had Alzheimer's. Grandpa Hale had it before it was even known as Alzheimer's. Mom would be the fourth sibling thus far to get it. I decided to move back home to help care for Mom and keep her home for as long as possible. Dad and I rearranged the kitchen, hiding the knives and other objects to be out of Mom's reach for her own safety. Once again, I'm preparing all their meals, but the joy has subsided. As was our routine, Mom would sit at the dining room table, watching on as I would be cooking, making fried chicken, mashed potatoes with milk gravy, and creamed corn, a recipe Mom was famous for. I glance over at Mom. There's this strange look upon her face that's hard to describe, but I can eerily see it as if it were just seconds ago. It's a look of sad resignation. I'm standing in her kitchen, her territory, over her stove, where she wants to be, where she used to be, where she no longer can be. We would repeat this scenario for over the next 3.5 years. It's a rare occasion anymore when I cook, entertain, or cook for others. But when I do, I'll often get asked, can I have your recipe? Will you mix in some flour, pour in some milk, add some herbs and spices? I really don't have a recipe. I'll go by look, feel, consistency, and taste. I've become my mother's son. Thank you.
Let's have you be mad at you instead of you be mad at me. Where can I plug my computer? Let's see. I'll grab you. The little jack.
You want to taller than that?
Yeah, I'll need it.
If you do, I'll be impressed actually, and then I won't be mad. I'll tell you.
Just 1 minute as I get set up. You can turn this down a little bit too. Can we do a quick sound check? Okay, let me adjust this to my height. There we go. Cool. So, my name's Luke. Yeah, I do hip hop, mainly production. I like making beats, like making songs, putting songs together, all that fun stuff. Occasionally, I'll try to rap. I definitely consider myself more of a producer than a rapper, but for the second one I'm going to do here, we'll put some words to it, do a flow, see what happens. Yeah, so I'm going to do something pretty similar to what I did last time back in October. It was sort of a beat looping thing where I'd start with one element, then add another element, then another one, and just keep looping it. You know, guys like Ed Sheeran have done that in the past year. They just keep looping until they've got the full thing, and then they'll sing or rap or do whatever over it. So I'm going to do something pretty similar to that. So last time I did West Coast, like 90s California type stuff. This time I'm going to do like Southern hip hop. So think like Migos, Drake, well not Drake, Future, T.I., stuff like that. So yeah, here we go. you go. That was the first one. I tried to come up to a rap to this one, but like I was only feeling like a triplet thing, and it was like, it's too fast for me. I'm not that good. All right, next one. I goofed. I'm gonna try that again. I was street, already out. City was bad, going to worse. Brother killing brother, leaving in a hearse. Parents want out, moved us down south. City with the bass cell, kick in the mouth. That's where the story begins. Never knew rap would be a means to an end. Never knew these sounds would feel like friends. But now I cook beats, just listen to them. Thank you guys. Yeah, so I produce, I'm on SoundCloud. Just hit me up after the show if you want to see the link and hear all other stuff I do. I'm going to post these two soon, so thanks guys.
How you doing out there, Groundswell? Good evening. Yeah, I'm having a problem with the bus drivers that run ahead of the schedule. What's the purpose of having a schedule if you're running 4 or 5 minutes ahead of it? Unless you're going to do it every time. You got to let me know. And I don't like to call in because now in this modern world they have a technology that can tell the bus company exactly where the bus driver was, so that he knows they know whether he actually missed that stop. And actually the penalties are pretty hard on them damn bus drivers. So I just go straight to the bus driver. Now I'm just there's only 2 of them that give me a real bad trouble, and on Friday nights a lot. I'm gonna say, can I have your number so I can call you and find out you're running early? So, all right, enough of my bitching. Don't you know it's been raining in the mountains and the river's on the rise? Cannot hardly reach the other side. And the devil, he's in trouble, I can see it in his eyes. You don't give him shelter, he'll have no place to hide. Well, the devil deals in dying and he travels in a hearse. He treats you like a dog now, he'd like to treat you worse. He don't know the answers, and if he did, he'd lie. The devil is a joker, and he don't want you alive. And some will win and some will lose, and the winners all grin and the losers stay. Deal the cards again. Oh, won't you deal the cards again? It's been raining in the mountains, the river's on the rise. Cannot hardly reach the other side. And the devil, he's in trouble, I can see it in his eyes. If you don't give him shelter, he'll have no place to hide. If you don't give him shelter, he'll have no place to hide. All right. We'd ride out in the valley and down to where the fields are green. Go down to the river and into the river we dive. Go down to the river we ride. Hi, hi, hi. But I got married pregnant, and then that was all she wrote. And before my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding clothes. We went down to the courthouse, and the judge put it all to rest. No wedding day smiles, we walked down the aisle, I was no wedding dress. And we went down to the river we dive. Go down to the river we ride. Hi, hi, hi. Well, I got a job working construction. Oh, sends me down to the river. Oh, I know the river is dry. Down to the river tonight. Ay, ay, ay. Bruce Springsteen. Supposed to nicely follow my diatribe about the rain tolerance there, but it didn't. I didn't get a chance to tune my guitar. Along came the FFD, swept us on the line, and it was running down the Cedar Road, just 25 minutes behind. Running into Suffield, the headquarters on the line, and receiving strictest orders to get there right on time. Georgie's mother came to him with a bucket on her arm. She said, "Son, many a man's lost his life trying to make lost time. But if you run your engines right, you'll get there right on time." Well, up the track she darted, and into a rock she crashed. Upside down the engine turned, Georgie's head was smashed. His head lay next to the firebox door, and the flames were running high. The doctor came to him and said, "Son, be still. You may yet be saved if it is God's precious will." "Oh no," cried he, "that will not do. I'd rather die so free. I want to die for the engine I love." 143. Well, Father was a railroad man. The dirt would never clean from his hand. He broke his back with a shoveling pole. Come home and lay the dirt or good. One night the train went left and the tracks went right, and he died. I can still hear the voice of the marshal at the door, telling Mom and me he wasn't coming home no more to live. All alone, all alone. My mother died when his worst storm caught her outside and she died. All alone, all alone. Her hand reaching out, bright as snow. I've been on the road, Pops was living my only home. And now I sit by the railroad track, a wicked wind bites me in the back. I can hear Mom and Dad calling from the grave anymore. What we gave to you, don't live your life all alone. Find a home all alone. Find a home. God is everywhere, God is everywhere, God is everywhere, God is. Well, God is everywhere, and everything, and everyone. She's everything. Thank you for that. Those who come regularly know that the last 6 to 8 months I've been reaching back into the early days of my songwriting. It was either that or come on stage nude, you know. That way I expose myself. And it's now 44 years of doing this, and some of those early songs are wonderful in their own way, but they also have that beginning quality that you just go, every once in a while things. When I first got out to Los Angeles, and it was 1977, and late 77 and early 78, I had a grandmother and aunt who lived down in Anaheim. And I decided on a Saturday I would take the city buses and make my 3 transfers and get down there. Now, I really didn't think this through very much. I didn't think about it would be an hour drive from where I lived in Hollywood down to Anaheim anyway, if I had a car. And the bus has to stop an awful lot of times. I had no idea how long this bus ride would be. It was nearly 3.5 hours to get down to the great city of Anaheim, behind the orange curtain there. But there was a gentleman on the bus, well, we called them bums then, now we call them homeless. And he was entertaining and well lit, but he kept pulling and he said, "Yo, I was eating food out of a trash can, Paris, France, 1944, when I watched Dwight Eisenhower and Marshall." And I said, "Generals, we lost 8,000 men in a single day. 8,000 men. Eisenhower looks at me and he says, "Son, you salute when you talk to a general." Hold his hand up to, "Farewell, my general. Farewell." And by the end of that bus trip, I knew that I had a song. From the second year of writing. I'm not going to bash the name of this brand of these strings, because it has as much to do with my playing. But man, I'm on 3 different guitars, and they just keep doing the same thing for me. Strings don't last that long for me anyway. But they wander. Farewell, my general, farewell. Oh, farewell, my general, farewell, said the old man as he saluted the sky. Oh, farewell, general, farewell, oh, farewell, and goodbye. We walked 40 miles in the rain, just to find that we would do it again. We froze our toes with our feet in the grave. In a battle we lost 8,000 men. And then old Idaho Joe, he bought death right in front of my face. Oh, many times I saddled that horse, but I never could mount its disgrace. So farewell, my general, farewell, said the old man as he saluted the sky. I farewell, my general, farewell, I farewell, goodbye. Now this old man made some of us laugh, and others, they just went about their way. Some added a joke to the ride, but most don't have nothing to say. I believe I can see the humor, but just a man in whose shoes I had stood. Well, he saluted his generals, and I prayed for promises unkept. So farewell, my general, farewell, said the old man as he saluted the sky. Oh, farewell, my general, farewell, farewell, and goodbye, and goodbye, goodbye. Thank you. I'm going to do one more and we'll call it a short night. And December 14th, a week from tomorrow, 7 to 9, Uptown Bills in Iowa City. I'll be doing first 2-hour show I've done in a couple of months, and I have just been reloading the cartridges into the gun and getting ready for the playing solo again. You know, when I had the band, I had about 140 song playlist. But when I'm solo, I've got about a 3,000 song playlist. Makes it much better. Well, or worse. You may not get lost. But I've added, I was going to, with all these school shootings, I think I needed to write a song about school shootings, and I went, oh, Boomtown Rats. I don't like Mondays. I did it in 1976. And then I was in a house fire recently. I said, I should write something about it. I was like, oh, Warren Zevon and David Crosby. I was in the house when the house burned down. I got to keep going and finding the ones that, things that nobody had written about. And this song that I'm going to play right now is about 5 in the morning on a Mother's Day. My mom had passed on about 6 years before this. The ex-wives, didn't necessarily, they liked a pleasant call, but that was about, they didn't see my need to have my presence on Mother's Day. So I was, Mother's Days were kind of a day I spent alone. I was listening to NPR, and there was a Jewish Buddhist psychotherapist from Northern California, had a retreat and everything. And she was telling the story that her Jewish grandfather told her about 2 wolves that lived in your heart. And I thought to myself, you know what? My grandmother was born on the Oklahoma reservation. She told me a story about 2 wolves that lived in your heart. I thought to myself, how is it you have this Jewish tradition, this American Indian tradition, and there's got to be a song. So I started Googling it. After an hour and a half of Googling, I could not find a single song based on this story. So I went downstairs and I wrote it. And I was going to call it 2 Wolves. But Papa Z, my third oldest, said, no, you got to call it the one you feed. Coming off tomorrow. When I feed. Ferocious, fierce, and smart, there are 2 wolves. One is freedom, one control, there are two birds. And the problems I do know, there are two birds. And the virtues I extol, one and both to fly. They want each other to die, and their fury-flooded flight has torn a hole in my soul. It's torn a hole in my soul. So let me ask you, if God is everything, isn't he also the devil? Since from her all things must bring, if you had to lose it all, would you rather be a papa or a king? These two wolves, they fight about such things. One of them is loving kindness, the other hate, bitterness. Which one survives, which one succeeds? Be the one that I be. Be the one that I be. Be the one that I be. I believe it, Danny Cole. Spread the word about Groundswell. This is a treasure of a facility, and people need to take as much advantage of it as they can. It was what it was put here for. Thank you. You want to do something? Yeah.
I am thinking sitting. To this area, I'm very glad to have found this place and the people in it. It's really due to my good friend and colleague Brian Mock, who is minding the clay works back there. We have some fantastic creative energy happening. I think everyone here has a quick idea about what that's about. If you're curious, you can speak to Brian. I wanted to come up to say thank you to everyone for this and the whole thing, and also to say a few words about what brought this here. There are a lot of vectors, a lot of confluences connecting to make this. One of them is a building right over there about 2 doors down. It is Popoli. At the moment, it used to be a bank. It was designed by Louis Sullivan, an architect who was, it's common knowledge, it's conventional wisdom that he was 50 years ahead of his time. I believe it is uncommon knowledge that he was more than 100 years ahead of his time. The proof I take of that is that a man that I've had the honor and privilege to work a small bit with and read a lot of his works and experience his buildings in person, where I swear when you walk by it feels like the air is shaped differently. when you're going by this architect's buildings, Christopher Alexander, when I was meeting with him in England where he lives, when I was doing some academic stuff trying to understand, can you actually make buildings better? Is there a method? That's the one question he asked his entire career. Is there a way that you can show people that they can use as a tool, as a method in their own work for whatever they are doing in design that will lead whatever they are doing to be better? He thought, yes. I also agree, and I think there's proof in the pudding, but you have to try. But I was going by there, I was expecting, Goethe was famously quoted as saying, architecture is frozen music. I really think there's something to that, especially after quantum mechanics. But there's something that you can feel at the human scale. I was expecting, after having studied Chris's buildings, that there would be something akin to harmonics, something like vibration, like cymatics, which is very, very real. When I was there, I felt something tactile. That his idea was that one of his main ideas is that if you shape geometry carefully enough, vividly enough, with enough care, with enough harmonious, positive shape and intent, that it has a greater intensity of life, that life does not stop with biology. Life is a gradation of complexity rather than a matter of metabolism. I think that's more useful than the other way of seeing it. And as I walked by this building, I could feel that intensity that he had imparted with his decades of wisdom and experience, as like I could touch the shape of the air. I've been wondering if gravity was a thing about it. Gravity is the least understood of the four fundamental forces. The fly in the ointment of the standard model of physics. And this gentleman, this architect, Christopher Alexander, his father was a math teacher in Austria. He and his family left Austria in 1938 to go to England. And his father was an Austrian math teacher and said, oh, you want to be an architect, get a PhD in math first. Good logical positivist school there. And so he did at Cambridge. Then he went over to the Boston area and got the first PhD in architecture offered there. And with all of this background, he understood how gravity might be part of it. He thought, he put in his books that architecture might show you, with all these physicists spinning around in string theory, I wouldn't be surprised that not from the experts, but from the outside would come the next advance in physics. And I brought this up to him and I said, does it have something to do with gravity? Especially with this experience with touching the air. And he had said to me that when I told him about what that was like, he smiled and he said, about 50% of all the people who go through that building report a similar experience. So I was convinced that I was not crazy, that this was something empirical and undiscovered. And I asked him, do you think something to do with gravity? And he smiled and he said, I think that might be onto something. That's part of the confluence of all of this coming together, and part of why it's significant is he had not known at all about how his method that he had discovered was so very similar to what Louis Sullivan used to go over there. He was familiar with Sullivan's work, of course, but not with Sullivan's method. And all of these things being discovered, being brought together, being understood, being carried further into how we are co-creators of our environment. That's one short version of what Brian and I do. And thank you, because it doesn't happen without all of you, without the physical stuff. Thank you very much.